Here we go with the third installment of the Discipleship Packet video information series. And we're going to be learning how to make adjustments with our thought life, our mindset. Um, so we can first look at Timothy, 1 Timothy 1:5. Now the purpose of the commandment is love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and from sincere faith. This is a description of love. So it's love which comes from a pure heart, good conscience, and from sincere faith. That's a lot. It's hard to accomplish something like that, especially in the world that I live in. Um, First, we need to take a look at how we are and the things that are within us. Most of us will be struggling with a lot of sin. And here's a list of some sin: greed, lust, gluttony, pride and vanity, resentment, fear, dishonesty, idolatry, seeking approval from others, control, sloth, self pity, isolation. These are examples. It's not all inclusive, but it gives us a good start. And so we can just take a look at ourselves and see where those are at. When we can see where the error is or where some problems are, then we can be able to make an adjustment, a correction. Um, we need to look at how is this displayed? How is greed displayed in my attitude, in my thinking, in my behavior, in my motivation? What's going on behind that? What am I seeking? What am I desiring? And just kind of write that down. It's going to be an individual thing. It differs from person to person. And then we can learn more about the mind and heart effects of these sin, um, and then make a righteous adjustment, which is something of God's goodness, God's grace, God's character. Um, the word humbly is going to be used a lot because we're to be servants of God, and we can't do that out of our own, thinking of ourselves, running on our own ideas. We humble ourselves before God. We submit ourselves before God, and we rely on God. So um, let's go. Let's look at resentment. Um, Now, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the book, it says that resentment is the number one offender, and they talk a lot about how resentment gets in the way of spirituality and in the way of relationships and the way of morals and good living. So, resentment, one example of what happened is hold grudges, fault finding, negative focus, complaining, victimizing, feeling the victim, thinking we're a victim, looking at how everybody's doing us wrong, um, defensive. Um, Maybe we plan for the worst. We're thinking of the worst thing that's going to happen and preparing for that, which makes us defensive and guarded, resistant. And then we look at how it affects our mind and heart. Well, we're angry, we're guarded, we're hard hearted, thick boundaries, protective, maybe seek retaliation, maybe use passive aggressive sarcasm that may be destructive or antagonizing. Um, we're selfish. We care about ourselves. We're looking for about protecting us and getting the best for us, and not very concerned about others, but only of how they might do us harm or make us look bad or things like that. So the solution, the righteous adjustment that we're going to make, that's using God's character, is forgiveness, mercy, seek peace, humbly seek to understand others with empathy, pray for those we find are offensive, and for spiritual growth. So we can continue to go down this list as we ought to in order to improve our ability to fulfill the commandment and to love from a pure heart, a good conscience, and sincere faith. Further below, there's a blank sheet, and we can make our own. It's not that difficult to make squares, so we can make our own and with whatever paper we have in front of us and begin making our list. This increases our awareness of what's going on within us, which is absolutely necessary to improve our conscious contact with God, our alignment with God. It's absolutely necessary. If we're not looking at this, we're not paying attention. If we're not paying attention, we're being spiritually irresponsible. And we're choosing to do that for many different reasons. One of the reasons is that nobody else maybe is doing it. Well, if nobody else is doing it, or if my church isn't teaching it, then why should I do it? That could be an excuse we might go to. And if we look at New King James, well, this is New King James Version, John 15. I'm not sure how different it is on other versions. It's probably pretty similar. It says, if the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. But all these things they will do to you for my name's sake, because they do not know him who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would have no sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. He who hates me hates my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which no one else did, they would have no sin. If we look at, if I had not come and spoken to them, they would have no sin. If we are not going and speaking to the world about sin, about how about how the Bible says Christians are to behave, if we're not making that clear, if we're not um, trying to grow and improve and progress in the manner of which we ought to be according to the Bible, if we're looking at, we can very easily, not very easy, well, it is easy going through the steps. How hard is it to get up and pray and to look at ourselves? And physically, that's not difficult. It's convincing ourselves that makes it difficult. Um, but this is the direction we're called to go. I think the first step is just, are we going to do it our way, or are we going to do it God's way? If we can convince ourselves God's the master, do what he wants, like we would with our employer or somebody else that has an authority over us, we give into that authority and we do what they tell us to do. It's how the military functions. They tell us to do something that's just absolutely goes against what we want to do or what we think is right, but we do it anyway. It's because we give in to them as the authority. And we're to give in to God as the authority. And so this is our purpose, to learn to love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and from a sincere faith. And the good conscience piece is just aligning ourselves right with God. So each day we ought to seek more and more to improve ourselves with God in our minds, in our hearts, in our soul, with our strength, effort, and diligence.